The morning of my daughter's engagement party, I stood in the kitchen of my own house. The house I had lived in for 26 years, the house where I raised 2 children, where I painted the front door red myself because nobody else was going to do it, and I realized that my name was not on the seating plan, not pushed to the back, not placed at a side table, not there at all. I stood with that chart in my hands for a long moment. It was printed on cream cardstock, the kind you order specially. Someone had put real thought into it, and whoever that person was, they had seated 43 guests, assigned every chair in my dining room and living room, and the rented folding tables that stretched into the hallway, and had simply not included me. I set it back down on the counter, I thought. She did this deliberately, because nobody accidentally leaves out the person whose house the party is in. Nobody forgets to assign a seat to the woman who spent 2 days making the food that was sitting in the refrigerator right now. And nobody does that by accident when they have had weeks to prepare and a spreadsheet open on their laptop. But here is what my daughter did not know. She did not know that I had been paying attention for longer than she realized, and I had already decided, very quietly, what I was going to do about it. My name is June. I am 53 years old. I have a part-time job I genuinely like at a garden center in Oakville. A little house I am proud of. And a daughter who has spent the better part of the last 8 making sure I understood my place in whatever story she was currently telling about herself. And that place was always somewhere off stage. Useful but not featured, necessary but not acknowledged. My daughter's name is Adrian. She is 31. She is smart and beautiful, and driven in a way I used to admire without reservation. She met her fiancé, a man named Callum, about 3 years ago. Callum is from a family in Westmount, which, if you are not Canadian, is a specific kind of Montreal neighborhood that carries its own set of assumptions about how things should be done and who should be doing them. His mother's name is Philippa. Philippa has attended every major event in Adrian's adult life, with the authority of someone who had already decided she was the most important person in the room before she arrived. I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Because the seating chart was not the first thing. Not even close. Adrian is my only daughter. I also have a son, Theo, who is 28, lives in Kelowna now, and has always been the easier of the two. Not easier in the sense of simpler, but easier in the sense of someone who did not require constant renegotiation. Adrian and I were close when she was young. Genuinely close. She used to sit on the kitchen counter while I cooked, swinging her legs, telling me everything. I know what that closeness felt like. I am not imagining it. The shift happened slowly the way those things do. By the time she was in university, she had started referring to my opinions as a lot. By the time she moved to Montreal for work, she had developed a habit of correcting me in front of other people. My grammar, my pronunciation of certain words, the way I described my job, the kind of wine I ordered. Small things individually, collectively a pattern. I adapted as mothers do. I got quieter in her presence. I learned to edit myself before I spoke. I told myself it was just her generation or city, her new world. I told myself I was being sensitive. My ex-husband, Douglas, had left when the children were teenagers. He is not a bad man. He was just someone who eventually admitted he preferred his life without the noise of a family in it. And I will give him credit for saying it out loud eventually, rather than just behaving that way and making me guess. He lives in Calgary now. He and Adrian are close in the particular way of people who see each other rarely enough, that neither one has ever had to disappoint the other. When Callum proposed, I was genuinely happy. I mean that plainly. I wanted Adrian to have a good life and Callum was good to her, from what I could see. When she called to tell me, I cried a little. When she asked if she could hold the engagement party at my house, I said of course. Without hesitation. The house is bigger than my day-to-day life requires, and I had always liked filling it with people. That was in March. The party was planned for late June. Adrian and Philippa took over the planning almost immediately. I understood this, or tried to. Philippa had strong opinions and the organizational energy to match them. I offered to help and was told in polite enough language that they had it handled. I was told I could do the food, so I did the food. I made 3 dozen butter tarts from my grandmother's recipe. I made 2 kinds of quiche. I poached a whole salmon. I made a cold potato salad with dill that my family has eaten at every celebration I can remember. I spent 2 full days on it, on my feet in my own kitchen, and when Adrian arrived the morning of the party with Philippa and 2 of Philippa's friends to set up, she walked past the food on the counter, said great, and turned to talk to Philippa about the flower arrangement. I found the seating chart about an hour before guests were supposed to arrive. I am 53 years old. I am not naive. I have had enough experience with Adrian over the last several years to recognize the texture of a slight. And this was not an oversight. The chart was thorough. It included Callum's great-uncle who had flown in from Halifax. It included 2 colleagues of Adrian's I had never met. It included Philippa's book club friends. It did not include me. I stood in my own kitchen and I made a decision. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, the kind that settles into your chest like something clicking into place. I was going to stay. I was going to serve the food I had made. I was going to smile at every person who came through the door, and I was going to let everything that happened next happen entirely on its own, because I have learned something in 53 years. The truth does not need your help. It just needs time. Here is the thing I did not tell anyone that night. 6 weeks before the party, I had run into my old friend Wendy at the farmer's market in Burlington. Wendy and I had been close years ago, had drifted the way people drift, but we had always picked up easily when we found each other. Her nephew works in event catering. He had been hired for the party. She mentioned, while we were standing at the cheese stall, that she had heard it was being planned as a family showcase. Philippa's words, apparently, from the vendor briefing. And that the host of the venue was listed in the event documentation as family of the bride, supplementary. Supplementary. I had gone still. I thought that was an odd way to put it, Wendy said carefully. I thanked her. I went home. I thought about it for a very long time, and then I decided to wait and see exactly how supplementary I was going to be made to feel. The party began at 6. By 7, my living room was full. People were eating the butter tarts, drinking the wine. Philippa had selected, admiring the flower arrangement, Philippa had brought in from a florist on the plateau. Adrian moved through the room the way she always moves through rooms. Confidently, charmingly, with the kind of ease that comes from knowing everyone is watching you and being comfortable with that. I stayed near the kitchen. I refilled platters. I made sure people had napkins. At one point, a woman I had never seen before complimented me on the quiche and asked if I was with the catering company. I said I was the host. She looked briefly confused and moved on. Philippa gave a short speech around 7:30. She thanked everyone for coming. She spoke about Callum's qualities, which are real and which she listed accurately. She spoke about being grateful to have Adrian joining the family. She thanked the venue. She said the venue, standing in my living room, looking at the walls I had painted and the bookshelves I had built, for making the evening possible. No name, no acknowledgement. The venue. My neighbor, a woman named Frances who has lived next door for 11 years, and who has known Adrian since she was 19, was standing just behind me when Philippa said it. I felt Frances go still. She reached over and put her hand briefly on my arm. She did not say anything. She did not need to. I excused myself and went to the kitchen. I stood at the sink for a moment with my hands on the edge of the counter. I took a breath. I came back out. What I did not know at the time was that Callum had been watching the whole evening from across the room with an expression his mother's friends would probably have described as thoughtful. I know this because he told me himself. Weeks later, he had noticed that I was not on the seating chart. He had noticed that I was not in Philippa's speech. He had noticed that I spent most of the evening in the kitchen. He had noticed, he told me, because he is someone who pays attention to who is doing the work and who is getting the credit. And those 2 things had not lined up all night. But that was later. That night I just got through it. After the guests left, Adrian and Philippa and their friends stayed for another hour cleaning up. I cleaned up alongside them. At one point Adrian said to me, cheerfully enough, "Thanks for doing the food, Mum. People loved the salmon." I said, "I'm glad." She went back to her phone. She did not mention the seating chart. She did not mention Philippa's speech. I did not bring it up. I said good night. I locked the front door. I sat in my kitchen alone in the quiet, and I let myself feel it. That old particular grief of being the person who does the work that makes things possible, and then gets filed away before anyone thinks to say your name. It is not a new feeling. I have been sitting with it in some form for years. but this was specific. This was deliberate. And I was done pretending it was something else. The consequence came 3 weeks later, from somewhere I did not expect and had not arranged. Callum's younger sister, a woman named Petra. No, I need different. Her name was Delia. 27. Quiet and observant in the way that youngest children sometimes are. We had met twice before the party and gotten along without effort. She texted me the week after the engagement party to ask if I wanted to meet for coffee. I said yes. We met at a Tim Hortons near my house. Because she was driving through Oakville on her way to visit a friend. And Tim Hortons was easy and neither of us needed to perform anything. She had a double-double. I had an Earl Grey. We sat across from each other for a moment, and then she said, without much preamble, I need you to know what I saw at the party. And what I heard before it. She told me that 3 weeks before the party, she had been at her mother's house for Sunday dinner. She had overheard Philippa and Adrian at the kitchen table, talking about the seating plan. She had heard Adrian say, specifically, that she did not want me centered at the party, because it would shift the focus to the wrong family dynamic. She had heard Philippa agree. Delia had sat with this information for 3 weeks. She had turned it over. And then she had decided I deserved to know. I sat with my tea cooling in front of me. I was not surprised. But there is a difference between suspecting something and having it confirmed. And that difference still lands. What are you going to do? Delia asked. I'm not sure yet, I said. But I think I'm going to let things unfold naturally. She nodded. I could see she understood exactly what I meant. The unfolding happened like this. Callum had apparently had his own version of the Sunday dinner conversation, secondhand, through Delia. He had asked her directly if what she had heard was accurate. She had told him it was. He had been quiet for a long time after that. A few days later he called me. I want to describe the call accurately because I think it matters. He did not call to gather information. He did not call to mediate. He called because he had already made up his mind about something, and wanted to tell me directly. He said, June, I want to ask you something and I'd like your honest answer. I said, all right, he said. Was the way you were treated at the party? The seating chart, the speech, all of it, was that something that surprised you? Or has this been going on longer? I said. It's been going on longer. He was quiet, then he said, I'm sorry, I should have been paying closer attention. That's on me as much as anyone. He did not ask me to go easy on Adrian. He did not ask me to wait and see. He said he was sorry and he meant it, and then he said, I want to talk to Adrian, not to manage this. Just to be honest with her about what I observed and what I know. I said, I think that's the right thing to do. I don't know exactly what he said to Adrian. I have a partial picture from things that happened afterward. What I know is that it was not small conversation. Adrian called me 2 days later. She was not apologetic. She was, if I am being precise, defensive and angry and working very hard to reframe the evening as something I had misunderstood. She said I had made the party about myself by telling people, she meant Callum, that I had felt excluded. I said I had not told anyone anything. I had answered a direct question honestly. She said that was the same thing. I said it wasn't. She said I had always been this way and I asked her, very calmly, what way that was exactly. She didn't answer. I said, Adrienne, I made the food for your engagement party. I hosted it in my house. I was not on the seating plan and I was not mentioned by name in the speech. I did not make a scene. I did not say a word publicly. I just existed in my own home and apparently that was already too much. There was a long silence. Then she said, Philippa was the one who made the chart. I said I know. And you knew about it before the party. Another silence. She didn't deny it. She hung up without resolving anything. My ex-husband called the following week. Douglas, calling from Calgary, which he does rarely and usually when Adrian has prompted him to. He asked me what was going on. I told him, fully, from the beginning. He listened better than I expected him to. When I finished, he said, I didn't realize it had gotten that bad. I said, that's because it's been happening slowly enough that it looked like nothing. He was quiet for a moment and then he said, I should have been more present. I know that doesn't help now, I said. It helps a little, because it did. My mother called too. My own mother, who is 80 and sharp as anything, and who has watched my relationship with Adrian, with a particular kind of careful worry for several years now. She had heard, through the extended family, that something had happened at the party. She called and asked me to tell her. When I finished, she said, "You didn't cause a scene?" I said no. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Good girl," not in a diminishing way. In the way of someone who has lived long enough to know what it costs to hold yourself together when you have every right not to. The part that went beyond our family happened because of something none of us anticipated. Callum comes from a family with a wide social network, and wide social networks have long memories. Several people who had attended the party. People from Callum's side. People who had watched me carry food from the kitchen all evening, while Philippa gave speeches. Had talked among themselves. Not publicly. Just the private accounting that happens when people compare notes. 3 weeks after the party, Adrian posted about the engagement on her social media. The post was beautiful. Professional photos, lovely caption, the particular kind of warmth that photographs well. The comments were immediate and many. But some of Callum's relatives commented, specifically, 2 of his aunts. Women who had been at the party, women who had eaten the butter tarts and the salmon, wrote comments that were kind on the surface but pointed underneath. One wrote about looking forward to getting to know the whole family. One wrote that she hoped the next celebration would give everyone a proper chance to celebrate the people who made it happen. These are not accusations. They are the kind of sentences that only land if you were there, and you know what they mean. Adrian's own friends started asking questions in the comments. What did that mean? Who hadn't been celebrated? The comment thread took on a life she had not planned for. She called me again. This time the defensiveness was thinner. Not gone, I want to be accurate. But thinner, she said. Did you talk to Callum's aunts? I said. I have not spoken to Callum's aunts in any capacity since the party. She was quiet. I could hear her processing. Then she said, people are going to think the worst. I said, people are going to think what actually happened, Adrian. Another long silence. I said gently. Because she is still my daughter and that has never not been complicated. I am not trying to embarrass you. I'm not trying to damage your engagement. I want you to be happy. I have always wanted that, but I am done being erased from my own life to make that easier for you. She did not hang up this time. She was quiet for almost a full minute, the kind of quiet that has weight to it. Then she said very quietly, I didn't think of it as erasing you. I said, I know. That's what made it so hard. We did not have a resolution on that call. I am not going to tell you we did, because that would not be honest. What we had was a pause. The kind where something has been said that cannot be unsaid. And both people need time to figure out what that means. Callum sent me a message a few days later. He wrote, I want you to know that you will always have a place in this family. Not supplementary, not behind the scenes, a real place. I'm committed to that. I saved that message, not out of bitterness, just because it was the right thing to say and he said it without being asked. Philippa called me once. It was brief. She said she was sorry if the seating plan had come across the wrong way. I thanked her for calling. I did not say it was fine, because it was not fine, and I am 53 years old and I am done saying things are fine when they are not. My relationship with Adrian is in a different place now than it was before the party. Not resolved. That is the honest word. But different. She has started calling more often, which I notice without reading too much into it. Last week she called to ask me about my grandmother's butter tart recipe. She said Callum had mentioned it 3 times since the party, and she had till to learn how to make them. I told her I'd teach her in person. She said okay, I don't know what the wedding will look like. I don't know what role I'll be asked to play in it, or whether Philippa will have put my name on things by then. I am choosing not to anticipate. I spent a lot of years anticipating and adjusting and making myself smaller in advance, trying to prevent a slight before it arrived. I am done with that. What I know is this. I did not react. I did not confront anyone publicly. I did not engineer a consequence. I made the food. I stayed in my house. I answered an honest question honestly. And everything that followed came from the simple fact that the truth was already there. Sitting in the room, waiting for someone with a clear enough view to see it. The butter tart recipe is still in my recipe box, in my grandmother's handwriting, on a card that is yellowed at the edges. I have made it at every celebration in this family for 30 years. My name was not on the seating chart, but the butter tarts were on every table. That is not nothing. That is in fact quite a lot, and I have decided that I am done pretending otherwise. If any of this feels familiar to you, If you have ever been the person doing the work while someone else takes the credit, if you have ever watched your own name get left off something in your own house, I want you to know that your presence matters, even when someone else has decided. It is inconvenient. The fact that someone arranged the room without you does not mean you do not belong in it. You do not have to perform your worth. You just have to know it. Have you ever been made invisible by someone who should have been the one to see you most clearly? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Nova Payback posts a new story every day. Real emotions, real stakes, real life. Subscribe so you never miss one.